Doug Wolfgang told me a story about one of his great glory years, and he had several, where he was the dominant open-wheel driver in America. And he said, you know, I sort of hate to say this, but there would be nights I would be thinking to myself, now what lap am I going to take the lead? If he was the driver you despised the most, it was must watch because you're just waiting. Every racetrack really loves it when there's a good guy and there's a villain. What more do you want?
Mel Kenyon is leading. Rich Vogler almost loses it to the wall.
You can see just how rough this dirt track is. Watching these cars, they're just really getting shook up.
I don't know who gets credit for starting dirt racing, but everybody I ever took to a dirt race, they were like, oh my God, that's the most exciting thing they'd ever seen.
The Midgets. For the spectator, it's certainly a lot of fun to watch, and many call this the most spectacular of all auto racing.
One of the most impressive records in all of motorsports has to be the one compiled by Mel Kenyon in USAC Midgets.
He is the all-time USAC National Championship feature winner, even ahead of the great A.J. Foyt.
Mel Kenyon is the king of the midgets. From the United States to Australia to New Zealand, he won them all.
Being called the king of the midgets, that's great. And when you can roll it in the trailer afterwards without having to pick it up and put it in, that's always good.
What a guy. I mean, you can argue all you want. He's the greatest midget racer of all time.
111 feature wins in USAC, but a guy by the name of Rich Vogler was catching me fast.
Now setting the car into turn number 3. He's off of 4. The winner of our feature race tonight is Rich Vogler.
When I'm on the racetrack, I just become a driver and I'm out there to win every race I run.
You described A.J. Foyt. Rich Vogler had that same tenacity. He was a bulldog, and he was there to win.
When I wrote for the Star, I called him Rapid Rich. He was a race driver, man. He was a race driver, and that's what he was there for, was to kick your ass.
Rich Vogler was the top of the heap as far as USAC racing for many years.
Rich just had unbelievable talent.
Rich Vogler with a new track record. Coming out turn 4, it's your leader. It is your leader, Rich Vogler. A vicious crash coming off the 4th corner as Vogler was coming down to take the white flag.
Really was a hard crash.
The red flag out again. The race has been halted once again.
I don't like to go over it. It's better not to dwell on the bad parts, just dwell on the good parts, you know.
Mel, the famous glove. What was the concept for the glove?
Well, Donald, you know, a man without any fingers has to have a way to hang onto a steering wheel.
Accidents happen to us. Never know when our time is coming. We all have troubles. It's not so much the crashes and the wrecks. With the Lord's help, it's what we do with our life afterwards and carry on. This room here is our machine room, and this room that we're standing in is the first room when we came here in 1967. We built this 2.5 car garage, and this held our race car, Indy car, and our Midget, and all of our stuff, and it was overcrowded. Every time we made money at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we spent the money on different additions to our facility. All of our frames are the same frame for the national car as well as our Kenyon cars, and these are motorcycle-powered Midgets. This is the first Kenyon car that we built, and it's still winning races and championships, and we built that in '99. Well, my name is Mel, or Melvin Kenyon. Everybody knows me by Mel, or Hoppy, if you will. Born in DeKalb, Illinois, shifted to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and then to Davenport, Iowa. And then we shifted here in 1967 and been here ever since.
When we got here, we always kind of looking around for a piece of property and happened to see a sign on the road out there one day. It says acreage for sale. So we drove down here and said, that's what we've been looking for. When we came here, it was nothing but trees. We cut down over 100 trees, cleared them, burned them.
Mom and Dad moved here in '71, He was a refrigeration expert, and so he took care of all of our air conditioning around this place and mowed the grass and did all kinds of things like that. They were our big supporters, Mom and Dad, all around the country.
His dad was very much interested in racing. All through that area, there were a lot of really famous little midget racetracks, and he grew up loving racing. And his brother, who was so much a part of it, Don, is one of the coolest human beings I've ever known.
In Mainz, Germany, one of the NATO anniversary exhibitions, flags of 15 member nations are raised for ceremonies marking the 10th year of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and Supreme Commander General Lawrence Norstad reviews unified forces of 9 nations.
Don had gone over to Germany. He was in the service. Don was real shrewd. Don noticed that these guys would get their pay and they'd lose half of it playing cards. And so he started loaning people money at 100% interest, right? And on payday, he'd be sitting there waiting to get repaid for the loan that he had given. So he accumulated a fair amount of cash and had a car, and he came back. Don really didn't care anything about the sport. So he sort of got snookered in to sort of helping the family on the midget operation. I think he ran one race himself. But they developed such an incredible partnership.
We actually had a good time. Back in those days, it was fun.
1964, a car that Mr. Watson built, the only midget he ever built. Nobody could figure out how to make it work. And he says, if you can make this thing work, you can drive it all year. So we won the championship in 1964, our very first one.
You build a car that is with the rules, but when the rules are a little fuzzy, then you make your chassis a little fuzzy, put it that way.
And so we did our own engines, and if they didn't go fast, it was my fault, and I adjusted the race cars. If they didn't handle right, it was my fault. But we did pretty well, considering we were basically a two-man team.
For the most part, it was just he and Don. I mean, he drove for some different owners, but Don was always his chief mechanic.
They literally fabbed and built their own parts that they put on their own cars that they built. I'd drive a car prepared by Don Kenyon any day.
I like innovation. You know, if something comes along, I'll look at something and say, I think I'll try that.
When he's really thinking, he's in the middle of it, he whips out a comb. I don't know how many men carry a comb in today's world, and he starts combing that hair back. And when he's staring down at that engine, you know he's thinking. And when he's got that thinking cap on, you better watch out.
Don focused 100% all the time, and it was definitely a team effort there. Mel Kenyon seems so quiet and passive, but you know, he stands on the gas. Obviously, he wouldn't have won so many races.
Mel Kenyon has 111 USAC midget wins. And you look at the modern day, I mean, the current guys at the top of the list are about around 30.
You know, Mel has that cross on his car, and he'll hand you those Bible verses in the pits. He'll lay the iron on you as fast as any other driver in the racetrack. He was deeply competitive.
We did run on dirt and pavement. 90 races a year we were running, and so there's all over the country. And so one car had to fit all different situations. The main reason we went to New Zealand was because we were invited over there. I went over there as a driver only. I didn't take any equipment over there. Then we decided to start building our own, so they became Kenyon cars. We sent the cars over, $400 each way on a boat. Now it's $5,000 each way. The dollar was worth $1 then, and now it's worth 43 cents.
In the midget field, people that Mel contended with every night, you know, Tattersall, Bob Winty, there's a multitude of good ones. I don't know that I can name one that's better than the other. They're all braver than Dick Tracy, put it that way.
He is probably the greatest midget driver of all time because of what he's accomplished and did it in eras where guys didn't just get hurt, they got killed driving those cars. And not only did he survive, he thrived.
That's the dark side of the sport. Obviously, there are other sports where people get hurt or potentially lose their life. Regrettably, that has always been sort of an accepted principle of racing.
Langhorne, Pennsylvania. It was the same car that Bill Vukovich Sr. died in. I lost an engine. The guys behind me, they were having a private battle between them, and all of a sudden, there I was. Joe Leonard, he tried to pull me out of the car. Steering wheels didn't come off at that time. Got too hot and they had to leave. I was in that car for 3 minutes in a 10-second suit. My wife flew with me to Texas, and the Army picked us up there with an ambulance and took us to Sam Houston Hospital. First thing they did was submerge me into a big stainless steel tank filled with 9-degree water. They soaked all those bandages up, and then they cut those bandages loose, and those bandages slid right off. But then they started on me with straight edge razors and shaved all my body fur scabs and blisters off. I lost most of my voice in that hospital yelling. But after a month's time, all of a sudden they had to start taking fingers off.
You know, Mel calls it the bonfire. You know, he's able to look at it with some humor. That kind of says something about Mel's strength right there. But, you know, Mel told me that the reason his voice is gravelly is because he screamed out so much in suffering while they were doing this treatment that it shredded his vocal cords. To get through an ordeal like that and still be able to smile and be happy in life, you know, but that was Mel. You know, he was dauntless, you know, nothing could break his spirit.
So it's kind of narrow now, and no fingers at work. That little wiggler of a thumb, that little wiggler is worth $10,000 all by itself, because how do you hold your plates while you're filling it with the other hand? Hold my wrenches with that hand, that little thumb, and tying your shoelaces. Wow, that's a miracle.
He's a quiet man. He's a little bit unassuming. You never hear him brag or boast or get loud, but man, still water runs deep, and Mel Kenyon runs deep. And that episode that could have ended his life and certainly could have ended his career, it didn't. He overcame it. That's the Mel Kenyon that I really admire, refusing to be defeated by a bad set of circumstances.
Mel, the famous glove. Tell us about what was the concept for the glove?
Well, Donald, you know, a man without any fingers has to have a way to hang onto a steering wheel. And we thought of many, many things, spent many hours in the car trying to come up with different methods of steering the race car. And what was decided upon to use in a final analysis was very much like the spinner on farm tractors or on steering wheels before power steering. On the steering wheel, we have a G-pin that's held on by 2 hose clamps to the steering wheel, and I slide the socket over that stem of the T, and I can turn that thing 360 degrees where I can't turn my fingers that far. So in a lot of cases, it's better than fingers.
Listen, Mel's story is a reminder of why some people can be a race driver and some can't. I mean, I would have retired probably the first time I ever got upside down, and he's had a couple of near-death experiences, and he just kept right on ticking like nothing had happened. So, I mean, it's just a different breed.
And 20 years after that accident, he's still winning. They don't call him Miraculous Mel for nothing.
He won 6 championships after his injury, which is unbelievably telling. All his Indy 500 success came after his injury too.
If you were a USAC champion, you were a badass and you were a name, you were a big name. And if you were an up-and-coming winner in sprints or midgets in USAC, you were going to get a chance in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
All night long, come on baby, let's get it on like a steam train coming.
Gentlemen, start your engine.
First of all, Mel, let's get something out of the way. A lot of people forget how great Mel was at Indianapolis. I mean, look at the record. He was absolutely outstanding in Indianapolis.
Well, naturally, your hopes are always to win this race. It's the gathering of the champions, and if you can walk off with this one, you're on easy street.
There they are on the track. 33 cars, 33 of the best drivers. Fifth row, Roger Ward, Johnny Boyd, and Graham Hill. Gary Condon, Mel Kenyon, A.J. Point make up the sixth row.
So I made the race and got bumped out of the race in '65. Then in 1966, we had a chance to drive the car Gordon Johncock traded in.
This is Gordon Johncock's car, a Gerhardt Ford.
We ended up starting the race, and we were actually running in second place behind another rookie, Graham Hill, who won the race. And we plugged a fuel nozzle on the last fuel stop for some reason. Fortunately, it plugged it. And so I ran on 3 cylinders for 70 laps, but I didn't have to back off or use the brakes because the engine was down. And so we ended up in 5th place, and from 2nd to 5th, that wasn't too bad.
We were ahead of Jackie Stewart. We were ahead of Graham Hill. We had all of them. So, but finishing 5th on 3 cylinders the last 100 miles was surprising. The engine didn't go kaboom.
If you look at his numbers and his performance, he did some of his greatest racing after that accident. And that's, to me, we talk about what defines a legend. Well, to me, one of the definitions is the ability to overcome adversity. That's Mel Kenyon right there.
Competition is fun, and to win the race is more fun. And if you make a few dollars, that's better.
The view you are watching is live. It's the scene right now at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The sun will set soon, and the huge amphitheater of motorsport is an almost silent world of cooling asphalt and lengthening shadows. What a contrast to just a few hours ago. More than 300,000 people were here then, straining for a better look at the 33 cars poised for the start of the world's most famous race. The green flag is out. They're underway. Going into turn 1. Again, Peter Refson in 2nd place, Al Unser 3rd. And there's the leader, Mark Donohue, who, remember, is stretching out that lead over the whole field. This is a 180-mile-an-hour race car, and it looks every mile of it right now.
Fantastic performance. I think they've done a real good job to get this put together so well and to have pulled out a lead at this point. And a spin.
There is a spin. That's Steve Krisaloff of the STP team.
Yeah, there's another.
And now another one.
My goodness, Mel Kenyon, it looks like he's jumping out the car. He looks as if he's injured his leg a little bit. He's limping around there, making across the track, which is pretty dicey even here.
I unhooked my belts and was halfway out of the car, and here they come. I flopped down into the race car in a crouching position, and Johncock ran over me. The inertia of him running over me sat me straight up, and I spun my head around. There's a picture of my head spun clear around to the right, and he left a tire track on my helmet. And I was able to get out of the car and hobble down in the infield with my right boot half off without getting run over. And sat down and rubbed my leg a little bit and took my helmet off. Holy cow, a tire track.
There's a famous photo. There's like almost someone looked like a police officer there, and somebody's got a fire extinguisher in a car just ramped right over it. And, you know, we're talking inches.
Well, the helmet must go on the mantelpiece as a memoir of this one.
That's a good old hat.
Mel, we're delighted you came out as well as you did. Good luck to you in the future.
Thank you much.
Mel Kenyon. Now here's Jim McKay.
Mel Kenyon's one of the courageous people in motorsport.
I think he started 8 times and was in the top 10 4 times. I mean, you know, the old saying in IndyCar circles for years was that midgets keep you sharp. And so a lot of IndyCar drivers would go back and run a midget because they thought it helped build the reflexes. So he had that, but his record at the Brickyard was outstanding. And Don and Mel are very proud of that, and rightfully so.
Now we begin qualifying, and the current point leader is the first to qualify this afternoon. This is Mel Kenyon from Lebanon, Indiana.
They were all about midgets, man. And there's a lot of things on the race car that they developed that people don't even know about. They were so immersed in midget racing. They're those racers, their minds are working 24/7. How can we make the car faster? How can we make it better? How can we make it safer?
We had the first roll cage in 1969, this picture here.
To put it bluntly, we used to kill 3 a year. And that was back before we had cages or roll bars. Your head stuck out, you were the roll bar. The cage was an important innovation with race cars, midgets, sprint cars, what have you. You're always looking for something safety-wise to make it better.
And we were incidentally the first ones in the world to have a roll cage on a race car in this country, 1969. And that was a bolt-on affair, but then in 1973 it became part of the frame. We were bad people because we ruined the looks of race cars with that roll cage, but it saved a lot of drivers, including me.
They poured their heart and soul into midget racing and left some pretty good intangibles, you know, that we benefit from yet today.
Well, as you can see, Mel is the only 5-time champion of the United States Auto Club in this kind of racing, and what an advantage it is for him to have an opportunity to be out first to qualify.
Well, yes, Larry, I think we can. Of course, that depends on whether they run their remaining races on the schedule.
What about this race? It is an important race. Would it be a nice one to win after all the other victories you've had?
Oh, it would for sure. I haven't won this race, I think, since 1967. I finished second and third, but I've never won it the second time, and I'd like to do that.
This is a 1980s, early 80s vintage midget. Don and Mel Kenyon at their shop up in Lebanon built about 50 of these cars, I think. And this was essentially the way midgets were built back then. It has a Volkswagen derivative engine, 4-cylinder, flat, air-cooled. Don built this car for me in 1981. And we raced it quite a bit, and then actually Mel drove it. This was the car that he drove in 1983. What was interesting was the top 3 drivers in the USAC Championship were Mel Kenyon, Rich Vogler, and Johnny Andretti. And there's about 25 Indy 500 starts with those 3 drivers, and who of course were the top midget drivers then.
It's racing from Reading, Pennsylvania today on NBC Sports World as the midget cars in the hands of top drivers like Mel Kenyon, Johnny Parsons, and Lonnie Carruthers challenge the dirt track and one another as the Guts and Glory gang chase the checkered flag in the USAC Midget Auto Race.
4 laps have been completed in this 10-lap heat race. We are still under the yellow. Mel Kenyon is running first, the all-time midget champion, 5 national titles, 84 midget feature victories. Sleepy Trip is in second place, the USAC midget champion in 1975 and 1976. And Rich Vogler, who is leading the point standings this year, is in third place. So, Johnny, we have 3 of the best midget drivers in the world in this heat.
Well, I should say so, Charlie. You know, Mel Kenyon has a record that probably never will be broken in midget racing.
I ran against a whole lot of people, but Rich Vogler was probably the one that was chasing me the hardest for feature wins.
Vogler takes over the lead as he comes inside of Johnny Parsons, coming out of turn 4 and down the front straight.
Rich Vogler was one of the greatest drivers in the history of the United States Auto Club.
Second row, it's Duke Cook, Sydney, Ohio, Rich Vogler, Indianapolis. There's the green, and here we go. Gates made a mistake. Gates trying to fight back, coming down off turn 4, cannot do it. Vogler's your leader. But once Vogler got past Carter, it's been pretty much a ride for him. Vogler slows down in the corner. Vogler loses power. Pepperak goes to the lead.
You know, when he started, he was okay. I mean, he wasn't, you know, he didn't come right in and start winning and dominating. I mean, he wasn't. I mean, you knew he was kind of fast, but he seemed kind of wild.
What happened to your car, Rich? Well, I got the white flag, and down in 1 and 2, the U-joint, which is couples the engine with the drivetrain, just exploded. What'd you think when that happened? Checkered flag just yards away. I can't say that over TV. Okay, Rich Vogler, the loser. Back to you, Keith.
He was one of those guys that wanted to lead every lap of every race. And then everything clicked and it took off, and then he started winning.
is your leader. Vogler in a Cosworth. Second, as you indicated, Mel Kenyon in the Volkswagen.
I put that Cosworth motor in his race car for him, and then I went out there and ran second to him. And so I shouldn't have done that.
This Cosworth really pulled through tonight. Don and Mel Kenyon and put the engine in for me, and it seems like they did a good job.
He was the first one to win the USAC Sprint Car title and the USAC Midget title in the same year. You know, he was pretty much unstoppable in the Midget.
He was in the shop, in the garage, always wrenches in his hand. Nobody more devoted, lived it, breathed it more than Rich Vogler.
Rich Vogler could have been as good a chief mechanic as he was a driver. Tremendous talent. Every race Rich went to, it didn't matter if it was the heat race, the semi-feature, or the feature, he was determined to win.
Vogler, 1 lap to go, 5/8 of a mile, slides off the second corner, heads down the backstretch, works that steering wheel. I don't think anyone is working that well in this racetrack. Look at him work in the cockpit.
He could get just about anything out of a race car that you can get out of a race car because he could feel the race car and do things with it that it wasn't supposed to do.
With 7 laps to go, I knew the car was working well, and I figured possibly Calabrese or somebody like that would be able to give me a challenge, but it looked like I was on my own.
All right, Rich Vogler puts it all together tonight and wins here at Indianapolis Raceway Park. Gary?
So welcome to the Grand King Race Shops and Museum. I'm Stephanie Throckmorton. This is Bill Throckmorton, and we have lots of memorabilia. As this is a working race shop museum, we work in it every day, but there's lots of memorabilia to see here.
Step over this way, there's the old Evel Knievel bicycle. Some great pictures, a tribute to Rich Vogler over on the wall. Those are nothing but Rich Vogler pictures, and quite a few of those pictures he's in Grand King cars.
This is a Vogler craft, which is a copy off of the Grand King Midget that Richie drove to Victory Lane in the first Chili Bowl. Donald and Rich created this Vogler craft, which is a copy off of the Grand King.
And this car was actually, this car was copied off of Doug Carruthers' very first Grand King Volkswagen Midget. And this car carries a lot of history. This was a car that Richie won the 1980 100 in. And back then it was tough, and a family car, it was rare for a family car to win a race that big.
We have the garments back here. We have lots of garments, lots of racing garments.
I think this was the uniform Richie was supposed to use in his first stock car race, and unfortunately he didn't get to wear it. And here's a neat one that we take great pride in with Eleanor Vogler.
I think a good way to start this is to ask you, what is this picture of?
Oh yes, my motorcycle. I made a lot of money on this at the scholarship. I got $100 each picture. I would frame it and put on Slovak, a 1949 Gypsy tour. Somebody wanted me to get on this brand new bike, it was a brand new cycle, and take a picture. So I don't know, but I did ride on motorcycles. Yeah.
How old were
you?
you?
There at 18. My husband had a motorcycle, you know, and of course, after I started going with him, I rode on the bike. But after I got married, especially when I got pregnant, I decided it was too dangerous. Yeah, I didn't think you had that. I should have figured you probably had that. My name is Eleanor Vogler. I was born May 9th, 1931 in Chicago. Got married in 49, and that's when I started moving west with my husband, Donald. I love you so, yeah. 1950 was the year that Richard was born, and that was the year that we got a race car. July 26, 1950, Donald, he drove up to Decatur, Wisconsin to go racing. Well, I was in the hospital. I went into labor the night before at 3 o'clock in the morning, so Richard took his time. That was the only time he took his time. After that, he never walked, he ran.
My father was a contractor, he built homes.
But summer times were devoted to building houses, but also fun. And most families that I knew, that I went to school with, they'd go to baseball games with their kids, dance studios, whatever. Nope, ours was racing. My father raced. We would go to the fairgrounds all over the country, and we would just go and ride the ride to get a cotton candy, a corn dog, and my brother and I, we'd be walking around the stands selling the peanuts. So my brother was always in charge, always in charge. I was his little sister, and I did what I was told, basically. We would go watch races until the point came at which my parents bought us a race car, a quarter midget.
Now my daughter, we got her a car too, and she was doing racing, you know, a little bit. One of the races, Jolly Rancher candy. So guess who won the race and got the candy? His sister.
The joke about it is, the first race car we had, my brother and I would share. Richard's name was on the outside of the race car. My name was on the inside of the race car. So I kind of always knew my place because fans could not see my name.
He used to win all the races there too. He was 8, he flipped himself. His father flipped him back over and he just kept racing. He was a wild child, had no fear. He had to climb up a tree to see something, he'd be up there in a minute. Not afraid that he might fall or break anything. Oh yeah, he was a handful.
In our household, my father was in charge. Or at least, let's put it this way, he thought he was in charge. My mother has a very strong personality also.
I wasn't one of those wives that were, oh, Mo, you're going racing every day and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I was always there and I helped build these race cars too. I mean, I was a big part of the crew.
My father, he was good at everything. My father built homes, my father fixed cars. He was really good at mechanics. And so he taught all of those things to my brother. When Richard was in school, he would struggle. At that time, there was no such thing as ADHD and dyslexia, and if there was, it was not, we were not aware of it. My parents were not aware of it, I was not aware of it, my brother, nothing.
Well, that's why he had trouble in school. You see, with dyslexia too, numbers would get screwed up. He overcame it later in life.
My brother never got his high school diploma. He got his GED. But my brother got his GED not because he wasn't able to accomplish scholastically. It was because of his behavior. He was a little bit of a rebel rouser.
Going down the highway 100 miles an hour with the cops chasing him. Oh, he had his times.
He didn't go along with the program. He didn't get along very well with the principal at that time. It's another family story that I probably shouldn't tell. When my brother got kicked out of high school, my father punched out the principal. My father had a little bit of a temper.
I mean, the thing that Rich saw growing up was his dad racing in an area, the Chicagoland area. Man, those people were tough, you know, and the way you resolved anything is you go down to the guy's pit, hit him in the jaw, he hits you back, and it's on.
His dad was really rough around the edges, and I think he was really tough on Richie.
I mean, basically, if he told you to do something, you know, you just did it.
On the pole in car number 82 will be Don Vogler. Vogler in 82, inside row number 1.
Don was a midget racer to the core, and so that's what, you know, Don instilled in Rich. I mean, there was no question about that.
We kept telling him he had to be 21, because you did at that time for USAC. And then Tom talked to him and says, "Oh, you could have started racing when you were 15. He says, "I lied about my age." Donald says, "What do you think?" And I says, "Well, he's going to go. Just make sure he goes in our car so we know what he's doing," which he did. After he built the 55, Donald was racing the 55, and Richard was racing a number 6 black car 6. They did Kokomo, and again, I think Richard won and Donald came in second. What can I say? You know, they were both talented.
The field rounded out by Rich Vogler, whose father is still active in racing. Vogler from Winchester, Indiana.
And talking to Rich Vogler, current point leader in the sprint car division. Also, Rich, I understand you're leading the midget division.
Yeah, I am. I won that title in '78, the midget title, but I've never won the sprint car. That's the one I'm really after.
Well, I know right now the only driver, to my knowledge, that's ever won both sprint and midget titles is Pancho Carter. I don't believe he did that the same year, so if you could capture both wins, that'd even put a little bit more of a feather in your cap, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would a little bit. I'd like to win both. I've got a good chance of doing it. 2 good race cars and no conflicting dates, so we just got to go racing and see what happens.
You're running third in the dirt champ car division.
He was the first one to win the USAC sprint car title and the USAC midget title in the same year back in 1980. And you know, he was pretty much unstoppable in the midgets from about the late 70s to the late 80s.
When I think of Rich Vogler, this is me, interestingly enough, I think about midget racing first, and I think about him at the Hunt 100 as a master of a place like Terre Haute.
In the confines of the Wabash County Fairgrounds in Terre Haute, Indiana, lies this 1/2-mile dirt racetrack known as the Action Track. Today, the richest midget race in the nation, the Hunt 100, will be held here. Good afternoon, everybody. From the Action Track in Terre Haute, Indiana, Bob Jenkins and Larry Newber here for the Hunt 100. The USAC Midget Division has been more or less dominated by 3 drivers, Mel Kenyon, Sleepy Trip, and Rich Vogler, but the competition here today will be much heavier than we've seen. From Terre Haute, Indiana, 33 USAC Midgets are about to take off on 100 laps around this half-mile racetrack. Here is the starting lineup for today's race. In the front row, car number 7X, Larry Rice, 79, Johnny Parsons, and 55, Rich Vogler.
33 of the finest midget race cars and midget race car drivers that you can find anywhere in the world today. It's the most important race of the year.
33 cars, and the green flag is out. We are racing. The Hunt 100 is underway. On the inside of the racetrack, it's a battle between Larry Rice and Rich Vogler. Now the cars 4 abreast as they go down the backstretch.
Leading the race in car number 97 is Steve Chassis, and now we've got smoke coming out of Larry Rice's car as he goes down the backstretch.
Steve Chassis has opened up here. He is really turning on the juice. Here he is down the main straightaway while the second place car driven by Rich Vogler comes out of turn number 4, so it's a half a straightaway lead for Steve Chassis now. We are a third of the way through this 100-lap race.
But this time, Rich Vogler says, "No way, buddy, I'm staying on your tail." And Vogler's making a move, and it looks like he may have the lead.
Vogler takes a run for it, but cannot get around. And look at the leader. Steve Chassis is slowing down. Steve Chassis drops out of competition on lap number 42. So the leader now becomes Rich Vogler in car number 55. Make sure the car stays in control and he brings it home. Here he is off of the 4th turn. Rich Vogler has won the Hunt 100 at Terre Haute, Indiana this afternoon.
We won the Hunt 100 9 times, I think they said. But for us, the Hunt 100, we won the Hunt 100 in that car. It was a big win for us and a big win for him.
Well, it looked easy for the last 50 laps, was it?
It's never easy. You're thinking something might break, tire might go flat, or wear a tire out or whatever, but the car was working beautifully. My dad did a fantastic job on it.
I think Don and Rich were the classic case of 2 really like-minded people. They really cared for each other and were very close, yet at the same time, always a little bit of competition between the 2.
I mean, I think in terms of just pure and raw talent, You know, he went beyond Don, and I think Don would have agreed with that. That Richie really became something very special.
You have to admit that the star of Auto Racing 80 of 1980 has certainly been Rich Vogler. I guess it's very fitting that the last televised Midwest race of the season, this guy here would win. He's been tough in the midgets, he's been tough in the sprint cars, a little bit of bad luck, but still tough in the championship dirt cars. And it looks like right now it's still going to be a three-man battle right to the final race for the midget season championship. Bob?
When I was a kid, at Sun Prairie, Wisconsin racetrack we would go to, I was probably about 9 years old. And I can remember to this day that there was an accident. They took the guy out, the racer, the driver, they took him out in an ambulance. And of course, children can hear what adults are saying, and he passed away. That driver got killed racing. And that was the first idea or awareness that something could happen. And this wasn't all just fun, you know, something could happen to my father. At that time, I was a kid, my father was racing, that my father could get killed racing.
I was up in the stands, and he went in and just went right in the fence, ended up hanging upside down in the fence. Well, they kept saying that he'd throttle stuck, but he had a heart attack. Mel Kenyon will tell you, he was crunched over his wheel.
I was following Don and Rich, and I got by Rich, and just about the time that I got by Rich, Don went straight into the wall wide open. I think he died on the way into the wall. And he hung up there on the wall a bit. Rich jumped out of his car and tried to help, of course, but he was already gone.
You know, Don was killed in a crash at the Speedrome, Indianapolis Speedrome, and Rich, you know, kind of ran down to the scene, you know, in total grief, you know, that realizing that his dad was gone. And man, what a terrible thing for anybody to experience, to be there, you know, when it happens. And that was just part of Don and Rich's destiny, that, you know, Rich had to be there at such a terrible, terrible moment.
I got the phone call from my brother. It was a shock to me, only because he wasn't hardly racing at all. It was very difficult, and especially so young. My mother was only 49, he was 53. Looking back on it, they were just young. And I remember asking Richard, I said, so are you gonna keep racing? He goes, tomorrow I'm going to a race. He said, I need to get back in a race car right away. Otherwise, I might not. And that was it.
What a terrific struggle for the top spot. Schilling saw Gordon that time. Now he's been challenged. Now he knows that somebody else is back there. If he didn't know it before, he's really got the idea. And
Look at that.
Into a big spin. He takes Gordon to the wall. Gordon smacks the wall very hard. Jeff Gordon hits the beds.
Now I have to call that the way I saw it. Rich Vogler drove right down on top of
Don Schilling.
Don Schilling, and then it just ran over his right front tire and spun him out. Now look at the white line. He drives way down over the front of him, almost in the grass. Tried to drive him down in the grass. There was no reason for it, except the fact that his car was loose, and he was trying to protect his position by using all the racetrack.
Well, Gary is standing by with Jeff Ford, and real happy to be talking to Jeff. Gary?
Well, you raised your helmet and shook it at Rich as you went by, so how did you see it?
Rich is he's not as fast as me and Schilling. We're faster cars. We're out there trying to pass him. He's just trying to hold his own spot. He about ran Don in the infield. I mean, you know, and Don couldn't do anything but get on the brakes, and it just caused him to get sideways. It wasn't Don's fault. It was Rich's fault.
You know, to describe Rich's style and, you know, that nickname, Mad Dog, probably not very flattering. I don't know. He maybe embraced it. He never talked about it much to me. But he earned that. This guy won scads of races. He was highly successful and respected, but at the same time was known for taking unnecessary risks, you know, over the top.
Mahoney's a lot faster than Vogler. He just can't get by because he's using the whole racetrack. They're afraid to get next to him besides that.
Tell us what happened from your viewpoint. What happened up there in the third turn?
What did he say happened?
I want to hear from you now.
I made the mistake of racing with Rich. That's what I think.
When all is said and done, despite any controversy you might want to raise, Rich Vogler wins again.
What happened over there in turn 3? There are a couple of drivers that aren't real happy with you right now.
Well, I don't know what happened, but you mean on one of the restarts? I don't understand.
When you were dicing with Schilling and also got Gordon involved, what do you say?
They weren't. I didn't even see them.
Controversial move on the back straightaway. You were going for the lead. Eugene Jennington made contact. He bumped the wall.
So, I didn't feel it.
He wasn't there to make friends. That's not what the point was. He was a competitor. The most famous race I saw him run was the Silver Crown race in Oklahoma City. The race starts, and a Kansas driver named John Johnson is on the front row with Rich. And John Johnson was enormously popular. Turn number 3, and there appeared to be contact, and John Johnson bolted the wall. I can tell you what the crowd's reaction was. It was absolute mayhem. I mean, they wanted to kill Rich Vogler.
Rich was escorted from the track by police after the event because of irate fans who thought Rich was responsible for putting one of their drivers out of the park.
So fast forward. Rich is at the very first Chili Bowl Nationals. Rich wins, and he roughs Gene up a little bit to get to victory lane. The crowd, we're in Oklahoma, is still mad at Rich over Oklahoma City, and people are literally looking around for like something to throw. And like people are picking up this pea gravel and slinging it through the fence, which had no impact whatsoever because they're so mad at him.
Danny Fry did this endo and was bumped in the rear by Vogler.
That race at Oklahoma City really said it all about how much people would get emotional about Rich.
Well, you're back in Oklahoma, not exactly your most popular state by the fans anyway. It must be, again, a popular win, and I'm sure you're happy with this one. $4,000 take home.
Oh, I am. And I'll tell you, the Oklahoma fans, they're one of the most enthusiastic fans in the country, and they're real race fans, I'll tell you. We had a little problem last year at Oklahoma City, but I think the fans will get over that, and they'll appreciate my style of driving and my winning type driving. I think they'll like it.
You won USAC last night, an open competition event now. Where's Rich Vogler headed?
Well, next weekend, Fort Wayne again, Sunday afternoon, indoor race there, so we're going to go for that.
You know, Rich, I remember, him talking about this at various times. It really didn't affect him when people booed him. If anything, that fired him up even more. And again, I think Rich's mindset was always that I'm the underdog, I'm the guy they want to try to kick to the curb, and I'm not going to let him do that. And he believed the world was against him from day one, and that's how he lived, that's how he raced. I'm going to do it my way, I'm going to prevail, and those people are going to have to learn to like it.
I think that's it. I'm a hard racer. I race on the ragged edge every lap, and if I make a mistake, which I have made mistakes, I'll slip, and if there's somebody around, I might bang into them. And just the opposite, when the guys are around me racing Rich Vogler, everybody thinks they need to beat Rich Vogler at no cost, and a lot of guys will try a lot harder than they're capable of doing to try and beat me, and it causes problems.
Well, he wasn't big. He wasn't physically imposing at all. I mean, he could have been teaching math in middle school. I mean, he had a funny little haircut, and he had the glasses. At least to me, he didn't really look at you very much. He was sort of always walking straight ahead. He was sort of slight. He wasn't going to put the fear in God in you like so other many drivers do. They were big and bulky and strong, but yeah, he was not a physically intimidating guy.
Rich was a guy that you looked at him and you said, this guy should be running a library, not driving a race car. But Rich Vogler could take the worst car in the field and have a podium finish with it, if not win the race with it.
Well, I have obviously a little presentation here, and probably you've seen a few trophy girls in all of your victories. In fact,
he was, by some would be a bit quirky, but he just wasn't there to socialize. And he was impervious, it always seemed, to any criticism or fan reaction or boos. It just rolled right off of his back. I mean, he just didn't care.
Just a few laps ago and lost several positions. And we have another flip down in turn 3. That is Rich Vogler. Rich Vogler has flipped hard down in turn number 3. And you can see that Rich is motionless in the race car.
He had a crash at Terrell, one of the 100s, in Stryker's car, the year after his father died. And he was knocked out. He had a concussion.
You know, he was always either winning or crashing. That was it. That was his modus operandi.
I remember we raced at Whitewater Speedway one night, and Richie started 6th. And he hit me so hard going into turn 3 and knocked me into the wall and tore the axle out of it. And after the race was over, I wrote a little story for the Star and called it in. And I went to the pay window, and he comes up and he puts it on. Hey man, I'm so sorry. He says, it wasn't my fault. Englehart shoved me into. I said, Rich, did you really have to crash me on the first lap? You know, you were going to pass me pretty quick anyway. That's kind of a given. I just can't. Why did you? He just couldn't. He only had one gear.
Rich was this guy that inevitably he's going to rub you wrong one time or another. That's just how he raced. Even his own friends. If you're on the racetrack and I got to put a wheel on you to move you, sorry about that, but I got to do it because I got to win.
Yeah, you damn right I got
what happened out there?
All that stupid ass flagman. They got a dumb ass flagman they can't see. You know?
Jack Hewitt, who, a great racer himself, his tolerance for somebody in what his view is racing him wrong is just about 0. And so there came a day, Vogler ran into Hewitt. Hewitt's hot, so inevitably, you know how this is going to end.
He gave Hewitt a slide job, and Hewitt came over and crapped him. Richard just got up, brushed himself off, went out and did it again and won the race.
I wanted to beat him up, but I'm glad I didn't. Then one day we was coming back up here for the Speed Week race, and him and I was tied in points. So we had to come up to the grandstands to draw to see who's going to start the pole and who's going to start the outside front row. You know, we both wanted the outside front row. Well, walking up, I told Rich about something. I said, hell, Rich, I gotta like you. Yeah, I don't know what was said, but I said, I gotta like you. I said, nobody else does. He said, that bad, Jack? I said, it's that bad, Rich. But I liked Rich. I liked them all. Hell, I mean, everybody's different, you know.
Why do you think people didn't like Rich?
He crashed you. He had them glasses. Vogler would run into you. I mean, there just wasn't no doubt. He was a good racer and he didn't need to. So I wouldn't say he did it on purpose, but you know, I don't think that had a lot to do with it. He just had that drive to win it at all costs, and other people had to pay the price.
We're with Rich Vogler, who will be starting on the outside of the first row in the 5th heat this evening. Pardon me, the 6th heat, which the transfer spot of the winner of this heat would begin the feature, the $50,000 to win Kings Royal race, on the inside of the front row. Rich, How good of a starting position do you think that will give you, starting on the outside of the front row in this heat? Well, that's the place to start here at Eldaro. Outside is the fast way around. Hopefully I'll beat the guy into the corner and be able to lead the whole race, which will start me on the front row of the Kings Royal race. You've got some pretty heavyweight competition.
You know, I found this old video clip not long ago of me and Richie at the 86 Kings Royal, and it was my second time to hold a microphone in front of a camera, and boy, was I green. But I look at that now, and I had this big mustache, but then I think, did I really look like that? Did I sound like that? You know, time passing as we change, but Vogler has never changed. He was strictly business when it came to dealing with the media like that. He was never unpleasant to me. I never had a bad interaction with him. He was professional in that way, at least with me he was, but strictly business. When you dealt with Richie, it was going to be strictly business.
Rich Vogler headed for victory one more time on ESPN is absolutely incredible. The number of times that this man from right here in the Indianapolis, Indiana area is able to take the checker flag, be it the Ascot Speedway in Los Angeles, California, or the Indianapolis Raceway Park here in Indianapolis, Indiana. Rich Vogler has won again. Here is the top 5 of tonight's race.
He was hard driving, didn't back off. He was fearless. He loved having fun. For Richard, racing was fun.
Serious on the racetrack. He took his work serious. But he was funny. He could be funny at times, you know.
I've never known a girl like you before.
Your car, you have 2 of them, and there's something peculiar about these cars that I don't know about that any other car has this particular quality. Your cars are named after women. Give me a little background on that.
Well, one car's name is Ellie Mae and the other one is Gladys, and I have 2 ladies underneath me when I'm on the racetrack, and I try and be nice to them as best I can.
Okay, which is the better lady out there?
Well, I don't know. It just seems like Gladys is putting out a little better than Ellie Mae right now. But Ellie Mae, don't get mad at me because we're gonna run her. We're gonna run Ellie Mae first on the qualification run, and if she doesn't put out, then Gladys is going next.
It must be the devil's work you do.
I don't even see these guys behind me. These guys behind me. I'm trying to do this straight face, and I don't. All right. I'm turning red. And Rich has high hopes for Gladys. I think he also has high hopes to appear at Crackers Comedy Club after this. So
You say he's pretty funny, huh?
he's a straight man. He plays it pretty close.
But you couldn't play all the parts that he was talking about. We won't ask.
The devil's a work you do.
I race cars for a living, so I don't have a 8 to 5 job, but it's how I got started. I worked on my dad's race car when I was 12 years old, and I helped him, and I learned what he knew. And when I first started driving, midgets 10 or 15 years ago, I was a little jittery, and I'd go out on the racetrack and, boy, let's hurry up and win this race. And a lot of times I'd spin out going for the lead. Friday, then we don't need it till Monday. Actually, it could be air Monday. More of a fun racing, the midgets are, because the expense is down comparing it to the Indy cars or even the World of Outlaws sprint cars. The people can take their midget to there and spend maybe $100 that night total. I mean, pit passes, fuel for the race car and their tow rig, and even a stop at KFC on the way home for a little chicken. It's inexpensive racing, and that's what makes it fun.
Kitley and Brookville Road. They called it the Speedrome. The track flourished and fathered many a great racing driver. In 1952, figure 8 racing was invented at the Speedrome. The 60s saw the great A.J. Foyt at the Speedrome. Lloyd Ruby has mile after mile of racing there. And many second-generation racing greats like Johnny Parsons Jr., Billy Vukovich Jr., and Gary Bentonhausen all have raced this short track on the southeast side.
If there was a more perfect place for Rich than the Speedrome and a midget, I don't know what it would be, because that is what I would call full contact midget racing.
might want to keep an eye on McClellan. I think we may get the green flag, Bob. Yes, we are racing 100 laps.
Steve Latshaw, former champion of this division, is right on Rich Vogler's rear bumper.
It's super tight, flat, there's no room. It's hard to pass. And that is not the place where polite racers are going to thrive. Well, polite and Rich Vogler were never used in the same sentence on the racetrack.
Is it aggression, bravado, or is it experience that allows you to pass in 2 or 3 lanes here at the Speedrome when everybody else seems to have a problem at it?
Probably D, all of the above.
The Speedrome that was his personal playground. He was unbelievable. I saw him win a race with 3 wheels, and I'm not kidding.
Now, Rich has won the last 2 regional championships here at the Speedrome. And right now, he has an excellent shot. All he has to do is finish in front of McClellan.
There's Mel, who's working pretty good on the top side of the racetrack.
You have to be able to pass on the outside here to do any good. But I found every wall here, including the grandstand. When you're on the outside, you're committed to 1 lane. And when they move up also, they move into you. Accidentally, maybe not.
Laps down the backstretch into 3. There goes Kenyon on the inside.
What a beautiful move. That is how it's done. Mel just stood on the gas coming off the backstretch into turn 3. He slid by Steve Latshaw, and we have the white flag out. One
flag is out, but look at Mel.
He may take the championship away from Rich Vogler here. Let's see if he can do it.
McClellan will win it, but here's the battle for second. Who's going to finish second? Who's going to take second? Oh, it looks like Mel. Oh, he bumps him out of the way. Who's going to take second? Mel Vogler wins the championship.
Steve Latshaw finished second as he went around both Kenyon and Vogler. So Steve Latshaw finishes second. Kenyon, I believe, got third, and Vogler fourth. So Vogler loses the championship in the last quarter of a lap.
Also lost the right front tire, and here it is on the high side. Right together now, and they get sideways coming off the corner, and Mel gets the outside wall as Latshaw was watching all the shenanigans in front of him. He dives to the inside and finishes second.
Just an unbelievable finish to our regional series.
I started attending the Thursday night Midget show and got real interested in the midget racing. We decided that we'd give that a try. Basically, I just was amazed at the ability that Rich had, and thought it was a real shame that people just didn't get the chance like they used to come up through the oval ranks and run Indianapolis. And John Stiles, the owner of the Speedrome, felt the same way. In fact, he decided to create a $10,000 winners award for the points championship in the Midget series to run at the Indianapolis 500. He would provide that to an owner who would put his champion from the Speedrome in a car.
And now a guy who, I'm not trying to be overly complimentary, but who really is a candidate, I think, someday to win the Indianapolis 500. Rich, what was that last name? Oh, right.
Yeah, thanks. I hope that's what my plans are for the future, naturally, is to try and win an Indy 500.
Well, that pipeline had gotten pretty thin for drivers who would come up the old-fashioned way and made it to Indianapolis, and you just wondered, was it over? And it was unfathomable a guy like Rich, who had raced as much and successfully as he could, wasn't going to get a chance to run Indianapolis.
Jonathan Bird, who's this Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise holder, he likes racing and somehow gets connected with Rich, and they get the car Kentucky Fried Chicken, and that became iconic at the Speedrome, and in the pages of Speed Sport News and things like that, there was this picture of this Kentucky Fried Chicken race car, and there's Rich Vogler, and those guys were good together. They won a ton of races at the Speedrome with that Volkswagen.
It seems that every time we went to a race last year, that black number 74 with Rich Vogler was winning. Now it's a red number 1. Same car, though, huh?
That's for sure. Jonathan Bird from Greenwood, just south of Indianapolis. He has a few Kentucky Fried Chicken stores down there, and I suppose this summer I'll be eating a lot more chicken than I have before. But between the counter and the new sponsor, hopefully this year is going to be as good or better than last.
Well, fried chicken fits right in with the racetrack, so we'll see you on down the line, Rich.
Okay, thank you.
That was a great time. I mean, it was just a fun period to be following midget racing. And Rich and Jonathan Bird, man, they made their mark.
Is it 84?
84. There were
Okay.
4 go-karts
Right.
on the start-finish line.
Yeah.
You tried to go into the first pylon, and I think I took you out.
Probably.
Spun you out.
Probably.
Because that was like normal. That's what
Sounds
big
about-
brothers do to little brothers.
Sounds about right.
And we went all around the whole racetrack, and I got the checkered flag, and you were third.
It wasn't the whole racetrack, was it?
Yeah, no, we started there and went all the way around.
Yeah.
All right, let's start here. So I want you guys could both just pretend we're not here. Look out for a second before you start talking.
Oh, we hadn't already started? We're starting now? Oh, my bad. My dad, Jonathan Bird, big, tall, imposing personality, businessman. Seemed like he had the golden touch with lots of things, growing up.
If you like good food at a reasonable price, you'll love Jonathan Bird's Cafeteria. After all, Jonathan Bird's is the largest cafeteria and banquet facility in the world.
I grew up here at the Indianapolis Speedrome. Started coming out here when I was 4 years old with my dad, and actually the guy that we bought our fresh chicken from our Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises. And we would just come out here on Saturday night and watch the races. A year later, Dad started owning cars here at the Speedrome, and by my recollection, his cars won just about every other race.
So he always loved racing, and Dad would start paying attention to the midgets back in the 83, early 84. And what he noticed, there was one guy by the name of Rich Vogler that just blew my dad's mind and dominated the Champions Group and won lots and lots of races.
As a gamester, and Rapid Rich certainly has the right stuff, and a big fan club here at the Raceway Park this evening as the victor comes in.
Dad said, going up to Rich, I think the story goes, I want you to drive for me, and I want to take you to Indy 500. Rich was that guy. He already USAC champion, and taking him to the 500 and us being at the 500 with him, man, it was pretty magical.
Well, Bob, here is the latest deal. You see Rich Vogler suiting up. Rich Vogler is still in very great spirits. He was joking and laughing with me just before he put his hat on, and he's ready to go out in the backup car that Kevin Colgan is practicing all month of May.
I didn't really think Richie would go all that well at Indianapolis. It's a precise type of race, a lot of finesse with that race car, and I never felt Richie was a finesse type of racer, man. He's on full kill, wide open every minute, and but I was wrong.
Wow, look at this. The backstretch speed for Rich Vogler was 2:17. He may have enough to bump Johnny Rutherford from the field. He's about to come down and complete lap number 1. An interesting story last year as he barely squeezed into the starting lineup. He qualified on the opening day, but it was bumped from the field at 5:46 by Gordon Johncock, but then went back out on the track and bumped Gordy from the lineup at 6 o'clock. Let's see what Rich Vogler can do here this year. The first lap, not too bad. It is good enough to bump Rutherford from the lineup. It's 42.217 seconds.
Johnny Rutherford's perspiring now, believe me.
There's Emily, Rich's wife, looking on. The third lap is a little bit slower than lap number 2, but it's faster than lap 1, and it's still good enough. 42.204 seconds. At the speed, 213.250, and there's the average, 213.2, good enough to bump Johnny Rutherford, and there he is.
It was still important to have a short track guy in the field of the Indianapolis 500. You might not have been a Rich Vogler fan the rest of the year, but when he made the Indianapolis 500, all of a sudden he was your guy, because he was the guy who came from a world that we knew. And that made him very special to us.
Indy, the very name conjures up an image of speed, but also an image of men, of all the men who have driven here since 1911, and an image of this man, the man who will win today. Who is he?
Looking back and, knowing how much the history of the 500 has meant to us, I don't want to over-romanticize that I knew it, that when I was 9 years old, that this was a magical thing and it was so cool and it was, life-changing or whatever, altering.
Today, May 28, 1989, it's the greatest spectacle in racing, the 73rd running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
You're looking down from the Goodyear blimp at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on a beautiful morning in May. Below you is the race.
I remember, I think, sitting with my aunt and uncle in the North Short Suit or something. We only had tickets low, and being at the race, and maybe I didn't appreciate it back then. It's almost like I kind of wish I was older back in those golden times to kind of been around all that type of stuff that was different before it all got so corporate and glitzed up and polished and everything. I mean, it was dirty, it was gritty, it was still in the mid 80s. Guys were losing fingers and toes and getting hurt. If a crash, you were going to get hurt. There was still some danger.
Let's take a look at this starting field. One last opportunity to review how the rows line up. The first row, of course, Mears, Unser, Fittipaldi, all with a great deal of promise. The second row, Jim Crawford, Mario Andretti, Scott Brayton. The 10th row, Rocky Moran, if he can make it into a starting position, Dominic Dobson, and Bill Vukovich III. And the final row, Davy Jones, Pancho Carter, and USAC Sprint and Midget champion Rich Vogler. And the green flag flies, and we're racing at Indianapolis as the front row heads for the first turn, side by side, and Emerson Fittipaldi sweeps from the outside.
He proved he had the discipline, the mental discipline, and the skill to wheel an Indy car very competently. It had situation continue to develop. He could have been a front runner at Indy eventually. He got a little better every time he went there.
We take a look at the conclusion, actually going back to lap 50. Billy Vukovich III, then going 3 laps down. Ludwig Heimrath Jr., Rich Vogler runs in 20th place.
I was proud of him. He had his share of detractors, and a lot of people would like to. That chip was there for a reason. There were people that didn't want him to succeed, and he proved everybody wrong, including me. When he got to Indy, and he made it stick. He didn't just get there once. He kept going back and continued to improve. It was a great thing to see.
A.J. Foyt comes in and his last top 5 finish with 10 years ago. Brayton, Jones, Vogler, Bernard Jourdain.
He took that Indy car like it was a midget. He strapped it on his back, and he gave that car a ride. Rich had a fantastic 500. He was moving through the field, and I want to say he was running 8th when the Jiffy Man, Howdy Holmes, and him collided in whatever fashion and knocked Rich out. But Rich was moving.
He did exceptional, actually. I don't think there's anybody on the inside that wouldn't agree that Rich Vogler got everything he could out of the race cars he was given.
This was my 6th year at the Speedway, and every time I said I'm going to finish that race, that was my goal, to finish. I was hoping to finish in the top 10 if I did finish, and I finished this year. I got that out of the way, and the next goal naturally is to win that race.
He was always prepared to deal with whatever he got in the first turn, He crashed, he did crash a couple times in Indy cars during the 500, but he didn't have any experience. And I think if somebody would have taken him under, if somebody would have, Roger Penske somebody like that gives him a ride, and in the proper engineering and training and testing, he'd have been a badass in an IndyCar too, believe me.
When you're on the inside, there's a lot of people who have admiration for people that those on the outside think are just also rans or were in the field. But insiders will look and say, man, he had the equipment he had. And that's, you know, sort of Rich's story.
They have big hearts and a whole lot of horsepower. Brave souls and the will to win. Any night of the week, they are still the local heroes. And they live for the sound of thunder.
You know, as television sort of evolved, sports television in particular evolved in the 70s, ESPN was launched, and most of us, you know, if you even had cable yet, you didn't really understand where this thing was going.
Hi, I'm Gary Lee along with Steve Chassie. The first time since 1981 the USAC sprint cars are back on the pavement. A trivia question for you. The last time they raced here, 1980, the winner, Steve Chassie. These cars have been described as the most volatile race car ever.
Terry Lingner had a vision with the Thunder Series that was very unique. It was very aggressive, but you know, to get ESPN to buy into that was huge.
You know, it was a game changer to a certain degree at the time. I remember when ESPN started, and it was the perfect storm. I was a racing fan, you know, and all of a sudden, you mean I'm going to be able to watch a short track race on television?
All other forms of motorsports weren't competing on those nights, so for literally you were on a stage of your own on those Wednesday and Thursday nights.
Those of us here in Indy and those of us around the Midwest that followed USAC, you know, we all knew about Vogler and seen him race lots of times.
He was always putting the show on somewhere or another on national television.
Thunder's where really Richie introduced himself to America.
I don't go to the racetrack to run second in any race, whether it's a heat race, qualification race, or the feature race. I'm there to win whenever I get in a race car.
When I think about Rich Vogler and the Thunder Series and those times, I think inevitably about Steve Chassie. He and Chassie had a tremendous rivalry. When Richie was on those Thunder shows, and for a year or two, I think Steve was the analyst.
He's really got the idea. And look at that. Into a big spin. He takes Gordon to the wall. Gordon smacks the wall very hard. Jeff Gordon hits the fence.
Now, I have to call that the way I saw it. Rich Vogler drove right down on top.
I would like to make a statement about last week's Thursday Thunder Midget program. I feel as though I called the incident with Rich Vogler, Don Schilling, and Jeff Gordon exactly the way it happened. And I would call it the same way again tonight if I were there. And like I say, if I were there tonight, I would do the same thing again.
It was fun to listen to Steve. He was trying to be objective and did a great job on television. But it was so clear watching those races, you know, that there was no love lost between those two guys.
To get by Vogler, he's using every bit of racetrack there is out there. If someone gets alongside of him, they're in his hands again, and I wouldn't want to be there.
Thunder put Rich and people in his era in people's living rooms for the first time, and I think that helped Rich in a lot of ways he probably didn't even realize. You know, maybe that's what helped him get to Indy and things like that. But Thunder was just a big part of the Rich Vogler story, really.
Ready? Okay, ready. Hi, I'm Jeff Gordon. I'll be on Saturday night. Watch it. I should have said Thunder, huh?
You don't have to be, you know.
All right.
I'm scared shitless because I'm on TV. Man. This is fun time.
All right. Okay, I'm ready. Saturday Night Thunder, ESPN. Watch it.
Saturday Night Thunder. Saturday night.
I suppose we could characterize this season as the year of Jeff Gordon, the phenomenal teenager, only 18 years of age, from Pittsburgh, Indiana. He set a midget record in qualifying, a midget record in the heat race, a midget record in the feature, and also won the sprint feature, 3 more midget mains, and 2 sprint car features. A phenomenal season for 18-year-old Jeff Gordon.
Looking over the young drivers that we have here that you've seen the last couple of seasons, anybody that's really impressive to Mel Kenyon?
Yes, Jeff Gordon, and actually everybody is impressive. Everybody has their occasions when they're just great, but Jeff is fantastic for his age, fantastic. To have 4 years of sprint car experience, and he's not even 18 years old yet. Fantastic.
Gordon down low, Knipper up high. The checkered flag for Jeff Gordon.
I went out to the Belleville Midget Nationals when Jeff Gordon won, and one of the greatest individual drivers I've ever seen in my life. And everybody even then knew Jeff was. I mean, because they'd seen him on ESPN, on the Thunder Series.
Jeff Gordon has perhaps the biggest job in his young career here at Winchester, holding back Rich Vogler, who, based on the last 10 years, is the main man here.
That brings back a lot of memories for me because
Rich Vogler was the top of the heap as far as USAC racing for many years. And there were several drivers that could compete with him, but very few could beat him often. And Jeff came along, and here's this young kid, this teenager, and he was the one who could most successfully compete with Rich. And it was starting to build quite a rivalry.
It wasn't Don's fault. It was Rich's fault. I don't understand.
When you were dicing with Schilling and also got Gordon involved, what do you say?
They weren't. I didn't even see him.
Now look who's out in front. Jeff Gordon. Right now he is 3rd in the point standings, going after the Midget Championship this season.
Nothing's ever easy, The car is just working great, and I owe a lot to Raleigh Helming, who put a really good team together this year, and the whole car.
Jeff in 1990 was having his stellar USAC season, not only in my midget, but in John Bickford's sprint car and in a Silver Crown car. And Rich was having a difficult year.
Whoa! You see how loose he was on the entry? He is.
Oh, they get together in turn 2.
Well, I don't think you'll find anyone more frustrated than the man on my left right now, Rich Vogler. It's just not been your night tonight.
Well, I'll have to wait till the TV goes away so I can win races. I haven't been able to win on TV.
Well, obviously you just had nowhere to go in that accident.
Yeah, Jeff Gordon locked the brakes up. He said his brakes locked up, and I hit him and flattened my right front tire.
Well, we'll take the TV camera and head on out of here, and maybe we'll change your luck.
I'll probably win tomorrow when there's no TV.
It's too bad, but I guess our luck can't last forever.
I saw Vogler make some moves where he goes in high and darts below guys. But he looks like he's a little loose right now. He's not quite as tight as he used to be.
Rich Vogler has a problem. 1,800 miles he traveled, and what broke this time?
Well, we had a fuel pump drive break on us earlier in hot laps, and the guys took it all apart and scrounged around and was able to get it fixed, and it broke again in the heat race.
Vogler to that point hadn't won a race all year with USAC, and we're talking about mid-July, and that was highly unusual for Vogler. He was used to winning, running away with championships year after year, and it just wasn't happening this year. It wasn't clicking for whatever reason.
ESPN comes home to Salem, Indiana, site of our first race telecast. The Salem Superspeedway opened as an oil dirt track in June 1947. Like a storied stadium that has witnessed the great ball players, this high-banked half-mile speedway has seen the legendary names of motorsports pass beneath the checkered flag. A.J. Foyt, Bobby Unser here racing with Greg Weld. For decades, the 33-degree banking has presented a special challenge to racing drivers, and many of the greats have been romanced by the lure of the high banks. The action has been comparable to the other.
Well, I mean, think about the guys that wouldn't run Salem. There were a lot of good guys. Again, Ward, Vuki. Parnelli told me once, I said, Rufus, you got any regrets? He goes, yeah. He said, if I had to do it again, I'd never run Winchester or Salem. I said, The hell, you won races there. He goes, I don't care. It's the stupidest thing I ever did. He goes, that's insane. It's suicide. You got to be nuts to run those places. You know, it's like Winchester, Salem, Langhorne. They were on the schedule, but they weren't for everybody.
Our guest, Rich Vogler, can vouch for that. With close to 100 victories in the midget division now and 5 championships there. And you have 2 championships with the sprint cars and a lot of wins, 34-plus wins there.
Johnny Parsons had a short-lived, kind of almost a talk show. And Rich Vogler was a guest, and he said, I'm thinking about turning my attention to NASCAR.
You know, Rich had a lot of ambition. And, you know, he raced, as they say, to put beans on the table. And the better you got and the bigger stage you got, the easier that was going to be. And Rich, you know, had this ambition to be the best he could be. And when it became apparent that, you know, IndyCar racing had become a different animal, yeah, he got to Indy, and that helped him. But to run as a full-time IndyCar racer with all those road courses and stuff was probably a pretty unlikely path for him.
Right now, I'm not planning on running any more IndyCar races. I've changed my my concentration, my train of thought to the NASCAR racing. I'm going to run the Winston Cup cars at Pocono this coming weekend. Matter of fact, tomorrow we're going to be running the feature event. Hopefully, I'll be able to start up front. I haven't qualified yet.
So he turned his attention to stock cars and NASCAR, which at that moment was really starting to take off. And I think Rich believed that that was going to be a path for him.
Well, that's good news, Rich. We want to wish you the best of luck with the NASCAR.
Yeah.
And maybe a new career there. We know you've won about everything else you've tried.
You know, when he was getting ready, he was phasing his USAC career out. Matter of fact, he was going to Pocono the next day. He bought an airplane. When he got to 40, I thought he'd made it. He'd outlived the Mad Dog days. He'd made it to 40 years old and not killed himself. I had no idea that, nobody dreamed that that was going to happen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gary Lee in Salem, Indiana, about 70 miles south of Indianapolis and about 30 miles north of Louisville, Kentucky. Standing alongside is a 3-time USAC champion, Larry Rice, who himself won this prestigious event back in 1982 at the Terre Haute Action Track. But Larry, we're at the high banks, and there's something magical about the banks.
Yes, Gary, there sure is. And the magic is in the speed.
And that is rapid Rich Vogler. So he has a lot of flying back and forth this week, but he's here with us in Salem, and he loves the high banks. You talk about drivers that go well in the high banks. Vogler certainly can. Well, let's try it one more time. There's a look at young Jeff Gordon, and I know some people are complaining that we say young all the time, but he's only 18 years old. He'll be 19 in August. I think it's like August the 4th, but he has such talent.
It's our fast qualifier for the evening is Rich Vogler. He set a new track record, by the way, at over 115 miles an hour. So he is really on top of things.
Once he got out front in that feature, it didn't look like he was just there to win. He was there to prove a point.
Because Jeff Gordon was starting to press him as far as who was going to be the king in USAC. And Jeff was really good at everything, including the high banks.
That night at Salem, Rich was winning, and he was running away with the race, and Jeff was second. But you have to remember, in USAC racing, there's no radios, there's no rearview mirrors. So the only way, if you know there's a car behind you, is to sort of see them off to the side or possibly hear them. And so Rich had no idea that Jeff was a half a lap behind. And as far as he knew, Jeff was right on his tail, because that had always been the case, but not that night.
It is your leader, Rich
I was watching. I was living in Springfield, Missouri, and I think it was a moment that just froze in time, because you're sitting there, and I kept my eye on the official, and I knew this is bad.
It really was a hard crash.
The red flag out again. The race has been halted once again. Rich Vogler, a 5-time USAC Midget champion, a 2-time sprint car champion, had this race in hand. He had a sizable lead. There was a good battle for second. He came off the corner and made vicious contact with the outside wall. Once again, security trying to keep...
You know, the fact that Richie was leading the race when he crashed and really technically won the race moments, you know, of the crash, that's surreal, you know. No, that just doesn't happen. It's almost Hollywood-esque, you know, that and really far-fetched, but it's the truth. It's how it really happened. And a lot of people kind of got caught up in that about, boy, how fitting, you know, that if Vogler's going to go out, man, he's going to go out not only in a blaze of glory, but he's going to win going out. You know, who does that? But I got to be honest with you, I never really got too caught up in all that, because all I could think about is poor Eleanor, you know, poor Emily and their kids, and, you know, and Rich's close friends and family, and it was just tragic.
I took Emily to the hospital, and then I had to go back and do something with the boys. And when I got back, she says he passed away. That's why I walked in, and she says he didn't make it, you know. So, of course, then we had to drive back, and it was her and I. And the kids went with Aldersons. They didn't go with us, which, of course, was a good idea, because I was hysterical.
We have been told nothing, and if we have some information, we'll pass it on. A very serious altercation, once again, from a long shot down the front straightaway. You can see the damage done, not only to the guardrail, but the catch fence above it. And at this point, to be quite honest, we can't tell you what happened. It did not appear that anybody else was involved in the accident, except for Vogler.
I knew Richard was on TV live quite a bit. I mean, it was the Thursday Night Thunder, you know, but I wasn't watching the race. I have never watched it. I have no need to watch it. I don't want to watch it. There's no reason to watch it. And so I don't dwell on that. I dwell on the good stuff that has happened.
My buddy's skills and your friend's skills were undeniable. Rich came home a winner. We're gathered here tonight to tell Rich that he's the best and greatest winner.
He was proud that he had the 3 boys. I mean, it's just a shame he died so soon and didn't have a chance to do much with them. It was a bad time. It was a real bad time. I don't like to go over it because I was, you know. It's better not to dwell on the bad parts, just dwell on the good parts, you know.
If you could do it all over again, if you could bring your husband back, bring your son back, would you discourage them from going into racing?
No, they were happy. We were all happy.
The car that would have been driven this evening by Rich Vogler has been moved to the start-finish line by the crew. Also standing by his longtime friend, Jonathan Bird, a sponsor that made it possible for him to be in 5 Indianapolis 500s. Once again, the fans now applauding as the car goes by. A very moving ceremony, and of course, I have to believe that Rich is watching.
Knowing that, man, we just lost the best race car driver in the entire world that drove for us. And he went out a winner.
When I get in a race car, whether, like you said, it's a Midget at Speedrome or the Indianapolis 500, I do the same thing, and I have the same thing in my mind. I'm going to go out and win the race.
News still shocking the racing world, the death of Rich Vogler.
Yeah, this is going to be something that, you know, folks don't get over for a while, and it still is sinking in.
A lot of lives were changed then, not just the family life, but it turned out that a lot of lives, even the drivers that kept complaining about him, kept saying they missed him.
He was the best racer that we had on the circuit, and a lot of circuits. It's gonna put a different meaning on winning now, because when you race with Rich, and if you were fortunate enough to win, you knew you beat the best.
Me and Rich for the last couple of years have been really tough competitors, and you know, we've run wheel to wheel a lot, and he was always one of the guys to beat.
Larry, in one fashion or another, Rich Vogler touched all of our lives. As racers, we have competed against him. As broadcasters, we have talked about him. As race fans, we have cheered for him. And no one has won more races on ESPN over the last decade than Rich Vogler. I think this gentleman echoes the sentiments of all of us. Yes, we will miss Rich. He was spectacular.
It was such a blow to racing. It was such a blow to USAC.
I felt that way at the moment. I still feel this way today, you know, and that was just a profound loss. And I missed him, you know, I missed his presence. I missed him on the racetrack.
People don't realize you don't go in the race and just go around. You got to have a plan in your head. Now you're going to pass the person. These guys now, nobody's got any guts. Not anyone like Richard. I mean, there was only him. And 9 times out of 10, you say, well, Rich Vogler, and they all know about him. They know who it is. Of course, we keep his name alive.
Since Rich has not been with us, you've had the scholarship in his name, and tell us just a little bit about that.
Well, of course, everybody knows that it's the Rich Vogler Scholarship. We've given out over 220 scholarships already.
People remember Richard as a hard-charging racer, but he was also a softie. He liked to help people.
These are all $50. $50
We're having a live auction, a silent auction. Everything here today is going straight to the Vogler Scholarship Fund.
His mother, Eleanor, has continued his memory and legacy through a scholarship foundation for over 30 years now.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Always great to see you.
Our motto is, know about Richard, you realize how he was a go-go-goer. And secondly, don't just think about racing, because you're not going to be racing all your life. You're going to have to make a living.
We have given out about 500,000 scholarships.
The people that I really looked at, my heroes when I was growing up, you know, top of the list is going to have to be AJ Foyt. And Mel Kenyon. Of course, Mel's, you know, still racing, and he's still one of my heroes. Mel Kenyon, you give him a good race car, and I have a hard time beating him. Sometimes I even don't get it done.
Because of the fact that he was extremely competitive, and he was a friend to boot. So that makes it more of a fact that we're going to miss him. Some people will say, glad he's gone, but most of us won't. Most of us enjoyed racing with Rich Vogler.
If you please join me in recognizing one of the giants of all time, Mr. Mel Kenyon.
History is what happens right in front of you. And I always have that moment where I think to myself, where have we crossed that line where we now are clearly aware we are in the presence of greatness?
Vogler just pulling slightly ahead of Mel Kenyon. They're still wheel to wheel. Mel just will not relinquish that third position.
You know, we're used to seeing you in a yellow number 61. I have never seen flames on one of your race cars. Why this color scheme? Now, that's kind of a contradiction, isn't it? The flames and the cross?
Well, it is in a respect, but you know, the devil's around, but the cross is above the devil.
We had a Mel Kenyon Classic for years, and Mel raced in it. How about that? There's a race named after you, and you're still active.
I'm only 89 years old, and my wife says, hey, you're supposed to have retired when you're 77. But that's what I enjoy doing. That's Chris Wyndham when he drove for us.
They just taught so many young racers the craft of racing.
We get the opportunity and the joy to talk to you, though, and to congratulate you on a terrific career. You should be very proud to have this race run in your name tonight because you are one of the all-time greats. Thanks for coming by.
It's really a pleasure, Dave, and I appreciate you, too.
Mel and Don did something so cool that when their racing began to taper off a little bit, for them to introduce the Kenyon cars and stay active, talk about giving back to the sport.
Vogler now on the inside. There's an inside move. He may have third position. Let's watch coming off that fourth corner.
Rich Vogler runs inside. Great racing here. Still, Mel Kenyon will not give it up.
Sure, I won 14 different championships and a lot of races. But what are you going to say so quick to get the message across? The ability to keep doing what I did before with two hands was a miracle. But with the Lord's help, anything is possible.
He's known to men throughout the land, and if you ask, he'll give you a hand. He rides on air among the clouds. So if you go onto this place, you will see on this man's face a heavy beard. If you ask him, he will help you. All you do is come to him. He will give you what you want. He will give you what you need, girl.
You've done everything in midget racing, and you keep coming back and doing it again. I mean, you're looking for another season or two at least of this kind of thing?
Oh yeah, well, Mel Kenyon's in his 50s, and he's still running. I got 15 years to get that old.
Miraculous Mel Kenyon, one of the tough guys in motorsports, and they finally talked him out. Well, I think when he was 80, they finally said, Mel, I think it's time for you to hang it up, and it was reluctantly that he did it because he really loved midget racing because that was his life. This is Ronald Miller for Racer.com. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next week.